All right, another week of the Locked On Syracuse Podcast, Monday edition today, and I don't know why I'm sounding happy because that game was awful that happened against Miami.
Way to set the tone for today.
My tone was too upbeat off the top.
But you know what? When you look at the season, all you can do is sit back and laugh.
Yeah,
that's what this was.
You don't know whether to laugh or cry sometimes, but we're going to dive into whatever the heck happened at the end of the Miami game, which I shouldn't even say that. It wasn't even that surprising. That's the sad thing. Yeah. And we'll talk about that. Benny Williams wasn't at the game. We'll discuss that. Buddy did become the ACC's leading scorer in the regular season, at least. We'll discuss all of that on a gut-wrenching senior day loss. It's all coming up on the Locked On Syracuse podcast.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, and thanks for making Locked On Syracuse your first listen every single weekday. Only place for daily SU pods. You can subscribe to the show if you haven't already. That'd be awesome. Tim, Leonard, Tyler Aki. You can also subscribe to the YouTube page if you haven't done that and watch all our episodes there. This episode of Locked On Syracuse is brought to you by Stat Hero. Stat Hero is reshaping the way you play fantasy sports. Dozens of house-baked games to play daily. No sharks. No funky props, just your skill versus the lineups you choose. Sign up today at stathero.com/locked on. So Miami closes on a 10-0 run in the final minute, and Syracuse, the game went exactly how I thought it was going to go. Buddy Boeheim got to his 30 points. It was a cool moment. It's senior day for him. You had a feeling he was going to bring it. He did. And pretty much ever since Buddy hit that free throw to get to 30, I think that put them up maybe 7 with a minute left or whatever it was.
Yep.
It was just a colossal train wreck from that point on. And it was like watching a car crash in slow motion or whatever, where you just knew what was happening. Frank Anselm gets tied up with a jump ball, and that was a turnover. And then you're like, all right, they're not going to do it again. Then Girard.
It got to a point, like just the whole setup of it, it seemed impossible. It seemed impossible that you could blow that. But they found a way.
And I haven't tortured myself and looked at the win probability. Maybe some people will as we're talking here.
Let me do that.
Gosh.
While you're talking right now, I'm going to pull up the Ken Palm.
It must have been so unlikely because all they had to do was just get the ball across half court, make a couple free throws, and it's a great senior day and what was otherwise a really frustrating season. At least you had this to end the season, big crowd. Buddy got his rightful senior day moment of sorts. And what would be nice is you would have protected the winning season type of thing because you'd at least finish the regular season with a positive record and you go into the ACC tournament and maybe you would not be in jeopardy of losing that streak, but you definitely are now. So it was really tough to watch that last minute or so. Right up there for me in terms of the frustration meter this year of games.
I'm looking at I've got the win probability here. Syracuse is pretty much in the driver's seat, wire to wire. There's one little blip when Miami goes up 5-0 in the early going. That's when the win probability shifted, but it never really, just from looking at this, doesn't look like it got much higher than like 55%. And boy, that thing is cratered towards Syracuse with about 30 seconds to go. And then boom, it shoots up all the way in favor of Miami. But I mean, there's so many different elements that you can take from that final minute of gameplay. I mean, first of all, in terms of the pressure, all right, and people can say, oh, well, Miami won that game in the final minute. I think part of it, too, is Miami sort of won that game in the first half, which is going to sound weird to say, but that's part of why you press as much as Miami did. You pressure early on, especially against a rotation that's going to be as thin as Syracuse's. I know Miami's a thin rotation as well, but they've been a thin rotation all season long. Syracuse is just sort of getting used to having the 6 available guys out there, especially guards that have to play 40 minutes night in and night out. And you don't even have a sort of there's literally not a backup plan on this team right now at the guard spot without Symir. And to wear these guys down in the first half with some of that pressure and just sort of collect some data. What are they going to do here? What are they going to do here to try to counter some of these pressing attacks that you throw defensively? And that set everything up. And you see it absolutely crumble in the final minute for Syracuse. You can say Miami got their asses kicked in that first half. I kind of think that they sort of set themselves up for victory in that first half with the way they wore down the Syracuse guards and the way that ultimately they saw how Syracuse was going to counterpunch. And they found a way to make sure that this press was the reason they won the game. And it sure as hell was.
They never really had the game in hand until you thought, okay, under a minute left, up 7. It was, I think, a 10-point lead, 70-50 with about 2 minutes, or 70-60 with about 2 minutes left. But once again, they got up by as many as 18 against Miami. They lose this game. Miami is a great come-from-behind team. They're now 8-6 when they're trailing at the half, which is an unbelievable statistic. Some of that is just happenstance and luck, but also you got to give them credit for not sort of giving up in some of these games and coming back. They've done it before, so they probably weren't all that surprised when in the final minute they just kept sticking with it and were able to get the tip in at the end. And it was just such a train wreck down the stretch. And I know everyone's making this point, but it really did encapsulate the season. It was a perfect summary of sort of Buddy going for 30 and still losing, and getting a decent game from Jimmy and getting some nice threes from Joe, but he can't get the ball across half court, and he's not a true point guard. And that's why we've struggled all season long. They're now 3-6 in games decided by 5 points or less. And that stat's probably even a little bit generous to them, because you think about the Indiana game, they kind of blew it to get to overtime and then did win. So I'll give them credit for winning in overtime. But also,
it shouldn't be part of the statistic there. It should be 2-6. Like, you should be taking away. You shouldn't be adding a loss, but you should be taking away a win. Let's put it that way.
And 2 of their 3 wins by 5 points or less have come in overtime. The other one, Georgia Tech. The only game they won in regulation down the wire and made plays down the stretch to win was Florida State on the road way back in December. So, and the other, that's not including North Carolina. They didn't technically lose that game by 5 points or less, but for all intents and purposes, it counts as a crunch time situation in a tight game that they did not win. It's time and time again this year.
You know what the most pathetic part of that final meltdown to me is? You lost that game and free throws weren't the reason why. Like, how do you, in college basketball, when you see teams crumble in the final minute like that, the reason why 95% of the time is you miss free throws, you miss front end of 1-and-1s, right? They didn't do that in this game. It was just, you could not take care of the basketball. You have to be better like that. And I know people are going to be finger pointing at Frank, like, how is he coughing up the ball? This brings me back to the old Einstein quote, right? Where if you tell a fish to climb a tree, it's going to think it's stupid its entire life, right? Like, Frank should not be the one having to catch that basketball there.
Yeah.
Right? And I went back and watched the final minute. You know how many times Buddy Boeheim touched the ball in the final minute?
Never. Probably not at all.
One time. He touched it one time. And you know what? That's on him. I hate to come on here and crap on Buddy because he had a fantastic game. He pulled this team ahead to the lead that it got to. That is because of Buddy Boeheim.
I don't think it's on him, though.
No. Go back and watch that final minute. He is drifting, skipping. He's not doing anything to try to get open. Like, that's the frustrating
Girard dribbling the ball off his foot is not on Buddy.
It's not on Buddy. No, but he should be trying to get open. It's sort of on Buddy when Frank's the one catching the basketball on some of these inbounds. When he's not moving, go back and watch the final minute of that game.
I did feel like that inbound. I think it was Swider inbounded it to Frank. It felt like there were better options. It wasn't like it was last resort, get it into Frank. I just felt like Swider sort of panicked and didn't make the right read on that play.
I think he was worried about a potential 5 call. Like, I don't think Cole had the greatest internal clock when he was inbounding he was probably inbounding some of those at 3.5 seconds when he really had maybe another second to spare as well. And also, I mean, I hate to play this sort of game, but it's a complete hypothetical game, but you're at home. You're probably getting like a 5.5 count in all reality too. It was every single thing. You could point to something like people weren't trying to get open. Frank was the one that was the last resort catching the basketball in these moments. Indecisiveness, inbounding the basketball like you alluded to there. There's a whole laundry list of things that you could point to in this final minute. And the fact that free throws isn't one of them is unbelievable to me.
It is kind of amazing that this is actually a pretty good team ball security wise this year. Like we had that one game against Georgia Tech, 45 minutes, I think it was 4 turnovers or something ridiculously low. And you wonder, why aren't teams just pressuring Syracuse full court pressure more? We talked about that early in the season after VCU, and there were some good returns for teams that did that against Syracuse because if you have a deeper lineup than Syracuse, which most teams do, I guess Miami didn't necessarily.
In this game, they did.
Yeah, well, they still did because it's no Symir, and it was even thinner than normal for Syracuse. But it feels like teams should just be doing this in stages of the first half as well, because, gosh, we cannot get the ball up the court against any sort of pressure, and that's Joe Girard, Cole Swider making mistakes. No one's like good at carrying the ball up the court. Buddy, I guess, is not a turnover prone type of player. And I guess you could say Girard only had 2 turnovers in this game, but that's kind of the staggering thing is teams aren't really trying to expose that weakness of our game that much this year.
And the other part too with Buddy is like when Girard got the ball in that final moment to try to hit that one shot down the stretch when they were down a point. Like, here's the thing with Girard. He wants the ball in those situations. And I don't know if it's Buddy thinking, I don't want, like, this comeback starting to happen. I don't want to be the one that messes everything up here on senior day. I don't think that's it. But, like, if you watch him and the way that he does not try to create any sort of separation, it's worrisome to me. Like, you can knock Joe Girard all you want, but what you cannot knock is his unwavering confidence, both for better and for worse. He wanted the ball. You can't knock moments.
It, but I can see what you're saying. Yeah,
like
sometimes it does.
You can't. Let's say you can't take it away from him. He's got it in him. It's just an innate part. He wants the ball in those moments, and I just feel like sometimes you see Buddy Boeheim not go for those sort of moments. He doesn't try to attack and be the guy that wants to make those big plays down the stretch, and that's something that Joe Girard has. And I wish Buddy Boeheim had just a little bit more of in him.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't really, watching back the game, I didn't feel like Buddy was the guilty party down the stretch as much as it's Cole Swider, Joe Girard. And look, pretty much the entire second half, Miami did all they could to prevent Buddy from getting the basketball because he's the only guy that was coming through for Syracuse. And we've seen this time and time again. When it's Buddy and not a whole lot else, usually that catches up to Syracuse by the end of the game.
I just put it this way. Buddy Boeheim is your superstar. He has to be he has to touch the ball more than one time in the final 60 seconds of a game like that. He is your superstar. He has to want to grab the ball, and I just didn't see that out of him in this game.
All right, well, we will dive into a lot more from this game. We got to talk about John Bull being out there for the final sequence because that was very, very head-scratching for sure. But let's take a little break here and tell you about BetOnline. Football might be over for this season, but basketball is in full steam for both pro and college hoops. From all the latest odds, totals, player performance props to where the next fired coach is going to land, BetOnline.net is your number one spot for all your sports betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. It's not just basketball. BetOnline.net is your source for hockey, boxing, and UFC odds as well. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts.
March Madness is less than a week away now, and that means you need to start thinking about where you're going to be running your brackets this year. Are you going for the usual, or are you looking for the best? We've done our homework on this, and we are running our brackets with runyourpool.com. Along with standard brackets, Run Your Pool offers game types like Survivor or Pickaxe, both really fun in their own ways, and they have options to edit scoring as well, and they offer more intel to make your picks, stuff you're not going to find with ESPN or CBS. If you've got a business, Run Your Pool can help you take some of that madness magic and play alongside your employees or even gain new customers as well. Plus, they offer full white glove customer support, custom branding, and one of the easiest 3-minute setups that you're going to find. Clearly, we believe in Run Your Pool because we're running our own brackets there as well. That's the best way to tell that we believe in something. So if you want to play against us for a shot at a cash prize, join us at runyourpool.com/lockedon. And while you're there, create your own pool for your friends and family and enter the code Pure Madness. That's Pure Madness, all one word, at checkout for $10 off your custom pool. All the rules and details will be available there. That's runyourpool.com/lockedon for your chance to win a cash prize. We look forward to seeing and beating you there.
All right, so John Bull was out there for the final stretch. I think it was 30 seconds or so after Frank made that
the second turnover. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's weird though, because he's out there for the rebound. And this is the second time this year, the Indiana game, another example where a team just sort of jumps over our guy. Benny was the guy that was in the wrong in the Indiana game, not really jumping. This time, John Bull. And it's a head scratching thing as to why Boeheim put him out there. I wonder, was Barama's knee acting up in this game? Because it feels like that would be the logical guy to go to. And honestly, I was sort of surprised that Frank closed the game, considering Barama's been better in stretches and even was playing fine in this game. Frank was playing fine in the first half, but second half, they were just going down low. Miami only made three-pointers in this game, and they still win because they were scoring so much in the paint and exposing our defense down low. So I was a little surprised we didn't see Barama. I don't know, but maybe that was injury related. And I was totally shocked that we saw John Bull in that spot trying to rebound at the end of the game.
Anytime I see John Bull go to the scorer's table, I'm shocked. I don't get, I like, my like, what was he doing in the first half too? You saw him go out there and he thought the offense was running through him.
He took like an 18-footer, right?
He's the guy at the YMCA that he runs with you and he thinks he's going to the league. Like, the offense is not supposed to run through John Bull. The offense probably is better off if John Bull doesn't touch the basketball and is maybe resorted to just setting screens. I didn't understand why he was out there at the end either. I'm with you. I don't know why Barama wasn't out there. To me, that has to have been a health thing. And also, even though I am not the biggest John Bull fan on this show, that final tip-in was on Jimmy Boeheim, because I believe it was Miller was the one that had the final tip-in, or whoever it was.
Yeah.
But he slid over from Jimmy Boeheim's side. Like, he came from the other end of the lane and wiggled his way through and got past Jimmy. And then, I mean, there's not much John Bull can do. He's sort of boxing out his guy. You're not going to ask him to take care of two guys there.
Yeah, but he didn't even jump. Like, it was just
no, I know. Listen,
it's
not. But this entire situation is avoided if Jimmy Boeheim boxes out his guy. Yes, John Bull's at fault. He should be jumping. I think he is maybe getting held a little bit or undercut a little bit too. But there's multiple faults here when you're not getting offensive rebound or defensive rebounds on missed free throws. Like, that's something that should never happen. You literally have a potential to have a 4-on-3 advantage on a play like that. And when a guy comes from the opposite side of the lane to slither through and get a tip in, that's a problem. And there are multiple people at fault when that happens.
It is also ironic when you consider that Syracuse, their whole philosophy is we don't even try for offensive rebounds in the active free throw shooting. We never put a guy in the box. And now 2 times this season, I guess they didn't lose the Indiana game, but 2 times it has really cost them this season. And, there's been other
life has been stressful twice because of it. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, it's not a good look that it's sort of repeat events that are causing you to lose games, not inbounding the ball, not getting it across half court, turning it over late. Again, it wasn't the free throw shooting this time because they didn't even get to that stage. It's honestly mind-boggling, like you said, that free throw shooting didn't contribute to this loss more, but actually Buddy finally got to the free throw line in this game, went 9 for 9, and that was a big reason why he had his second 30-point game of the season, which we can talk about a little bit later on. But I just don't know why John Bull was out there. It was puzzling when Jimmy Boeheim was playing the 5 at Wake Forest. I think someone tweeted at us that. It's a couple rotation decisions this year now that I don't think it cost us a season or something, but I would like to have a winning season versus a losing season. As much as people are now sort of downplaying that, and Jim Boeheim's talking about how it's not the end of the world. He's not going to lose sleep if he loses that record. Well, if it's little things here or there and you'd keep the record, and it's sort of frustrating that we're just shooting ourselves in the foot to lose the record.
Well, listen, maybe he doesn't lose sleep over the fact that he does have the record broken, but you should be losing sleep over the fact that you have a sub 500 basketball team. Like, that is a standard that has been repeated time and time again, something that you built. Like, you should be proud of having that streak. And I'm sure he is. And maybe he's just kind of scoffing at it in the moment. He's like, oh, no, I don't care. I don't care. He's like being that guy. You know what I'm talking about? And I think maybe that's part of it right now. But the fact of the matter is yes, you should be frustrated that this is a sub 500 basketball team, because we can say all we want, okay, about how Syracuse has struggled this year. This team is good enough to finish above 500. 1,000% good enough to finish above 500. And they should have.
Right. And for Boeheim to start the season by hyping up the team and saying it's the best shooting team he's ever had, and sort of causing some promotion for the team and some reason to be optimistic. I guess that's what any coach does, but also I don't like you doing that and then him saying stuff sort of matter-of-factly into the season like, yeah, this is kind of what we expected this year, and we've done well to be this good, and we could be doing a whole lot worse, when this is the worst season you've ever had. So, like, let's call it what it is. It's been a bad season, and there's been some coaching snafus late, and there's been moments in games that you should have won. It's frustrating. It's also, like you said, sort of puzzling that he's going about it that way, of like not caring about the record. And there was a tweet this week. Matt Park tweeted out a quote, and in it, there's a line about Boeheim talking about playing or coaching Jimmy and Buddy on senior day, where he said, I don't care about the record. It's all about, playing with them or coaching them, to paraphrase a little bit. I thought it was a little overblown when people got all up in arms about that quote. I don't care about the record, because he clearly cares about the record. He just was saying that sort of like in context, and actually hearing the quote, the quote didn't bother me, but everyone's just looking for sort of a reason to poke at him. He actually does care about the record. He's he does.
And listen, for a senior day, like, I get it. Like, I'm not bothered by him saying like the senior day is about coaching Jimmy and Buddy. Like, I'm cool with that.
Right.
Like, the guy's been there over 45 years. Let him. He's a Syracuse Orange lifer. This program is literally nothing without him. If he wants to come out and say on senior day that this day is sort of about me coaching my kids, like, I'm cool with that. It's a lost season. Now, if you're going for an ACC title, regular season title, and he said that, yeah, I'd maybe feel a little bit differently, but you're far from that in this situation. So, I'm not bothered by that at all. No.
Yeah, and right after that line in the quote where he says, I don't care about the record, he said something like, look, I like it. So he pretty much clarifies it anyway. I don't know why people were really upset about that, but we'll talk about Buddy in a little bit, and also Benny Williams not being out at the game today. But March Madness is coming, and I love brackets, but I can't remember the last time I actually went deep or even won any money. I'm hedging my bets this year on my brackets in March Madness with Stat Heroes NCAA Pick'em contest. Stat Heroes NCAA single game pick'ems pits the star players against each other in an amazing hybrid between fantasy and sports gambling. Take control back from those handicappers that always seem to have the advantage. Start focusing on the players you know best with a gameplay that doesn't rely on big spreads, long odds, or funky props. Stat Hero gives you the advantage, resulting in their games winning 4 times more often. Why? Because Stat Hero eliminates the mystery about who or what you are going up against. In addition to their pick'em games, they also have dozens of lineups you can comb through to take on head-to-head. They simply post sets of players for you to take on. With a set of players you choose, Stat Hero is the easiest and fastest way to get your sports action fixed. The simple, sleek gameplay will have you playing in minutes. This is what daily fantasy was meant to be. Sign up for free right now at stathero.com/lockedon and use our promo code LOCKEDON for a 100% deposit match. That's stathero.com/lockedon. Use promo code LOCKEDON for 100% match. stathero.com/lockedon. Promo code is LOCKEDON, all one word. Terms and conditions apply.
Hey, it's that time of the year. You've given up on your New Year's resolutions, but this year, Tim and I have not, because we are sticking to ours to eat right, and it's all because of Built Bar, because it doesn't even really feel like you're making a resolution at all since you enjoy eating them. And if you haven't tried the Puffs, I don't know what you're waiting for, because you are missing out on the best of the best from Built Bar. Puffs are the first ever protein-infused marshmallow. They're fluffy, they're marshmallowy, and they're not just a protein bar. They're a treat, and they're covered in 100% real chocolate. Whether you like their yummy cinnamony churro, the coconut marshmallow, or the banana cream pie, all of them are so good, they're bound to be your new favorites. The low-calorie, high-protein, so you can replace your candy bars with these. Hey, maybe you're going to be watching some March Madness basketball. Why don't you use the puffs and have that and ditch your salty snacks that are loaded with carbs, loaded with sugar, all that stuff. Built bars contain just 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. Compare that to a candy bar, which usually has around 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, and dozens of net carbs. Or you can go with the traditional Built bars as well. Our favorite flavors are always coming out in new and exciting ways. Our traditional favorite, the peanut butter brownie, but new for this month, the white chocolate cookies and cream. So check out built.com because they're always rotating that lineup, and go to built.com. And if you use the promo code LOCKED15, you will get 15% off your order. Again, use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com.
So the big storyline of this game should have just been Buddy Boeheim gets the ACC scoring title, and it's a happy ending to an otherwise disappointing season. But we still should talk about Buddy a little bit. He gets to 30 points. He knew he had to get to 30 going into the day because Alondas Williams, Wake Forest, was the guy in front of him. He was off. Wake Forest was the odd team out on this Saturday to close the regular season. It's pretty awesome that he concludes the regular season as the ACC's leading scorer. Him and Elijah Hughes are the only guys to do that since Syracuse has joined the ACC. He's also second highest scoring season from a player in terms of a points per game perspective of a Syracuse player in the ACC era. Tyus Battle averaged 19.8 one year. I think he finished third in the conference that year. But Buddy's around 19.3 now. Elijah was 19.0 when he led the conference in scoring a couple years ago. The obvious thing that people are pointing out now is, well, that's cool, but when Elijah led the team in scoring, that was also a bad team that wasn't going to make the tournament. It doesn't really mean a whole lot, but I still think it's cool. It was a fitting way for Buddy's career to conclude in the Dome, at least.
Right. You just would have wanted to cap it off with a win. And at the end of the day, with the way that this season has gone, the wins and losses down the stretch have sort of been meaningless, but like, how many epic performances has this team spoiled? I mean, let's just take the last 4 games. Let's take the last 4 games here. You had a beautiful effort from Jimmy Boeheim. What do you have? 27 points against Notre Dame. Mm-hmm. You had Cole Swider go off for 36, and you had Buddy Boeheim go off for 30 in the final game in the Dome this year. Those are 3 of the best performances this team has had in the last, 5 or so years, and loss. And guess what? They're all games you could have won too.
Yeah.
We talked about how important this final stretch of games would be, right? How it was going to be really daunting. But hey, if you chunk off a couple, maybe you give yourself a little bit of life. There's a world where this team goes 3-1 in that final 4-game stretch. There really is. Yeah. And that's the frustrating part where, okay, now you're talking about maybe can you become a bubble team and maybe you make a deeper run in the ACC tournament. Maybe you get to that ACC championship game and take on Duke. And maybe you've got a different conversation after that. But the way that this season closed, 0-4 down the stretch, it sure as hell didn't feel like 0-4 with some of the efforts that this team put together and some of the games that they had in their clutches. But 0-4 is 0-4 in the most pivotal 4-game stretch that this team has had this season.
Yeah, when we were talking before we hit record on the podcast, we were both looking at their KenPom page, and you see 4 losses in a row, and it kind of hit us like, oh, like this is a 4-game losing streak. Like, the way
it didn't feel like
has gone,
one bit.
Yeah, and it's the first 4-game losing streak they've had since January of 2018, so it's been a while. They've had some 3-game losing streaks, and we know there's been some bad stretches in there, but not good. I mean, it is against the 4 teams that have the double bye next week in the ACC tournament and the 4 best teams in the conference. But I don't know. They were all winnable games too. So it's sort of weird that it has been 4 losses because it feels like the UNC game, they did everything right. Caleb Love hit a shot and then the overtime got away from them. This game, though, I will say the frustration meter was a lot higher for me, at least, than the UNC game, because this was a choke in every sense of the word, the way they lost this game.
This is the worst one of the year. And I think maybe it may not feel that way just because it's the last game of the year and this game literally meant nothing to the entire fold of the season. It's not going to have that same sting that the earlier Wake Forest game had, but when you look at it from a bird's eye view, maybe not from a bird's eye view, but when you look at it as in sort of the macro, like this is by far and away one of the worst losses this team has had in how many years?
Yeah, it was awful.
Blowing
the last minute
lead in the final minute.
Yeah, it was comical. It was like they were trying to throw the game in the last minute, the way that they lost this game. So.
That's what I love now with legalized gambling becoming a thing is everyone's pointing to this stuff. Everyone's pointing to the rigging of sports. And I'm sure this game got its fair share of that. But, and again, I'm not accusing them of throwing this game.
They didn't even like we have a bad call from a ref or something to point to. It was
right. You had no one to blame but yourself for this one.
Yeah. So the other noteworthy thing, I guess, from this game, I don't think it's noteworthy. I don't know about you, but Benny Williams was not there. And I think that led to people panicking a little bit and thinking, why isn't he there? Is he hitting the transfer portal? We've talked about this, but I am not concerned about Benny not being there, and I'm not concerned about Benny not coming back next year. Can a kid change his mind? Yes, but based on his comments throughout the season, it seems like he's going to come back. And again, I'm usually someone that I will believe that player is coming back when I see it. Like, I don't know about Frank Anselm. I wouldn't shock me about anyone else in the transfer portal situation. And I'm sure, like, there's a chance that Benny leaves, but this just felt like an overreaction. He was probably just not there because he was hurt, and they didn't want him to be standing on his leg or whatever, and they wanted him to take it easy for the last couple games. Why would he go there? Just to sit on the bench? Like, I don't really think this was much of a story.
I'm with you. I think this is a total non-story here. Like, who knows? Did he need a surgery or something? Like, maybe he was getting some operation. Maybe he needs to, because of the state of the injury, he actually has to stay at home. Who knows? Like, remember, this is a season-ending injury that he sustained. I get that it's late in the season, but like, if this was a sprained ankle, he's probably there. I think it's something more severe than a sprained ankle or something.
Well, Boeheim did say it's probably only 4 weeks, so I guess that's why
that's still a significant injury. Like, 4 weeks is no vacation there.
But they've already announced that he's going to be traveling with the team to the ACC tournament, so that would be like, if he doesn't make that trip, I think that proves that this was just probably like, for this game, there was no reason to go out there. And I get it's senior day and it's kind of weird he wasn't out there, but I don't think it's much of a storyline.
I'm with you. I think this is a total non-story here. And I think the other element to it too is you have the most transparent coach in all of sports, in any sport right now, and he would have said something. If Benny was leaving the program and him not being on the bench, him not being on the bench in that game was because he left the program, Jim Boeheim would have said something. He would have.
Right.
So I think that it's plain and simple. Drop it there. If he transfers, but this has nothing to do with it.
Yeah. I mean, Symir wasn't at the UNC game, and I get that was a trip, but no one freaked out about that. I think we're just hypercritical of anything Benny and Coach Boeheim related and jumping to conclusions on that one.
I'm totally with you. I think that's and like the Symir thing too, with a concussion, like, I don't think you're supposed to be flying. Like, so it makes sense. But this is a total non-story for me. I'm with you, even though both of us are super hyper with our guard up in this transfer portal era. I think it's 95% Benny Williams is back with Syracuse next year.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I'd put the number around there, and we don't know anything, but just look at the comments he's made and the way Coach Boeheim's been
look at the way his teammates talk about him too. Like, Cole Swider has been around toxic 5-stars before. When he was at Villanova, he was around Javon Quinterly, and there was the whole thing, like, Quinterly was posting on his Instagram story, this was my second choice for a reason, and because he wasn't getting the minutes that he thought he deserved or whatever it was. Like, Cole Swider's seen this thing go bad, and there is no bigger Benny Williams fan on this roster than Cole Swider. And the way that he talks about Benny's maturity, his ability to conduct himself as a professional, I think speaks a lot of volumes.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Cole Swider, tomorrow on the podcast, there might be a leftover thought that Boeheim was discussing from last week that we could talk about. If Cole Swider's coming back, the latest on that after the senior day stuff and how that all went down. We can also talk about the new quarterback commit for Syracuse probably at some point tomorrow on the podcast. And the ACC tournament, I mean, the games are going to be here soon, so we got to preview That first game for Florida State is Wednesday at noon. If they win, it's Thursday at noon. So we'll have you covered all throughout the ACC tournament with our recaps, our previews of each and every game, recruiting news, all that stuff is here on the podcast. So subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll talk to you guys tomorrow on the pod.